This is show number 1. What is a migraine? And 3 things that you can do to help yourselves. Because as you'll find as we get going, migraines can often be a thing that there are lots of stresses in the environment that you can actually, if you're aware of them, you can actually make a difference. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so in the show, what are we going to cover today? First of all, I'm going to cover what is a migraine, what are the triggers, and we're going to cover 3 things that you can do today to help yourself. You don't need to come into my office. You can do these today before the end of the show, or actually before the end of the day, because you obviously want to pay attention to the show and get the very most you can out of it. Okay, and so what is a migraine? Now, you as well as me can get on the internet and search what a migraine is. If you do, you'll find a definition, something like this from Wikipedia, which says that migraine is a primary headache disorder. It's characterized by recurrent headaches that are moderate to severe. And typically the headaches affect one half of the head and are in nature, they affect the hemisphere of the brain. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not very usable. It's not very practical. I'm all about practical, hands-on action making a difference. Okay. So I'm going to cover some of the points in a second, which are a bit more relevant to this, this type of complaint, to a migraine. Okay, now I know obviously I've had lots of practice members, lots of patients that come to see me and they've had excruciating migraines. And this is what they tell me it feels like. Okay, so, and also there are lots of things that I could say as platitudes to them, which actually drive them really crazy. And I'm going to share some of them with you today. So apart from feeling, when someone says this,
have you tried painkillers?
Obviously not that much use because most people, by the time they come to see me, they've had migraines for 10, 20, 30 years, maybe a couple of years, but mostly people come to me and they've been having migraines or headaches for a long time. Now, what is a migraine headache? Now, there are 17 different classifications. Now, if I was to go through all of those classifications on this PowerPoint slide, you guys would be feeling like this. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to spare you that. Okay, but there are some really important points that I do want to cover. Okay, and again, for those of you out there that live with migraine sufferers, here is another thing I never to say.
You're probably dehydrated.
Yeah, because they've done that as well. Yeah, they've been doing it for years. So moving on there. Now, these are the things that I find interesting and help differentiate between a headache and a migraine. Let's face it, a headache or a migraine, neither of them are good, but a migraine seems to take it to another level. A lot of people suffering from migraines are also vomiting, and not in a I've just drunk a ton of beer last night or wine last night type of way, more in a my whole body is rebelling and it's getting everything out so that it can heal and repair itself. Light sensitivity is another thing. I heard that Joseph Stalin suffered excruciatingly with migraines. Perhaps that was one of the reasons he committed as many atrocities as he did. We don't know. But I do also remember, actually more relevant, my mother, when I was like 12, 14 years old, she's a seamstress. She was a leather seamstress for a top fashion house. It was a British fashion house. And all their stuff was made in England. But what they didn't tell you, it was made by people with not much money, because we weren't like hugely, we weren't very financially abundant at that time. So my mother used to work under the stairs on her sewing machine. I remember at the end she would get excruciating migraines, and she'd have to go in a dark room for half a day or a day, depending on how long it lasts. Again, activity sensitivity. This is something that a headache doesn't have. So in other words, you're running around or you start doing exercise. Sometimes it's extreme exercise, robust exercise, and sometimes it's just even just going up the stairs can be set off a migraine. Okay. And it can last from hours to days. So a few hours to a few days. Now, the question that I always had, and I've heard in pediatric circles, suggests that a colic that babies had. So a baby's been fed, baby's been changed, baby slept, but they cry constantly. Now, there's been suggested that's actually by baby migraines, because a baby can't say to you, my head's hurting. They're just going to scream uncontrollably. And I know there's some young parents that live with babies, colicky babies for years and years and years. They live with colicky babies and they have months and months and months of issues just without them getting sleep, and the baby's just in excruciating trouble. I'm trained to adjust baby's atlas. That's the very top of the spine. I love working with babies and adults, of course. And we can't quite see that bottom one, but it's right. Let's see what we got. I've got on another slide here. Okay, I'll come back to that one. So, there are various other things that indicate migraine as opposed to a headache. Okay, let's see what else.
How's the headache? Why have you put the light on? I've got a migraine. It's making it worse.
So there you go. Right, triggers. I'm going to talk about triggers now. So, this is something that is specific to migraines. I have a lot of people come to see me, or ladies that come to see me, and they know when bad weather is coming, because people say, bad weather causes migraines. Here's the truth. Bad weather doesn't cause migraines. Let me say that again. Bad weather does not cause migraines. Bad weather is a stressor. It raises the pressure. The restrictions still within the body. If bad weather caused migraines, when there was bad weather, everyone in the country would have migraines. That doesn't happen. So it raises the pressure on some people's systems, and when that pressure has that additional stressor, and in those people's cases, there's probably something going on cerebrally, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. So there's something going on within the brain and within the structure of the skull that is causing that raising pressure to affect them a lot more than someone else. Also, things like, it's coming back. It is coming back. Oh, there we go. Right. Also, things like wine or alcohol, that can raise the pressure because that's a chemical stressor. And coffee, tea, again, caffeine. For me personally, I don't think it's with everyone. For me personally, I find coffee affects my body much more drastically than tea. But obviously, I was brought up drinking tea, so it might just be me. But time of the month for ladies when the chemical stresses are much, much higher. That's also an added trigger for a lot of people. Certain foods, there's a plethora of information on the internet that talks about there's some chemicals in cheese, chemicals in wine that can trigger off migraines. And so this again is one of the issues with migraines. Okay. Right, so we talked about a little bit about triggers, and I'll cover that again in another show. Today's show number 1 is just what is a migraine and 3 things that you can do right now. So stay until the end, and we're going to come back to that. Now, this show is going to be every Tuesday at 5 p.m. I'm going to carry that on probably for the next 2 or 3 months, and we'll see how we go. Do provide feedback. If you're listening to this and you think, oh, what about this? What about that? Do fire it down in the comments if this is after the live stream. Do come and support me in the live stream. It's always cool to have a few comments there. And if you are out there in watching me live, do throw a couple of comments up. It's always nice to hear from you. Okay, and with no further ado, we're going to get on with the show. Right, now treating symptoms. A lot of people treat migraines. As a chiropractor, I'm what's called a first principle chiropractor. I'm a first principle family chiropractor. I do not treat symptoms. That's not what I do. Okay, yeah, that's not what I do. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. Some stuff less damaging than others. Cranial adjusting, I do some work cranially, just within kind of a chiropractic paradigm. There's lots of kind of nutritional stuff you can do. Again, if you're treating symptoms with nutritional stuff, then that really is that is a practice of medicine. I don't do that. I find that what I do is super effective. There are a couple here that I do want to point out because I don't think people realize. So Botox injections, that's in the back of the skull, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So Botox is botulism toxin. That's what it stands for. And what it does is it kills nerves. So you know, people that have a lot of Botox in their face, a lot of plastic surgery, their face doesn't move, and people can often see that. That's because the nerves have been killed in there, so they no longer work. And then ablation of the nerves at the bottom sounds pretty innocent, but ablation means burning. Okay, so basically what you do using lasers, you can ablate the nerves. So in other words, the surgeon has decided, or the person, well, the surgeon it will be probably, has decided that those nerves are causing problems. Now, as a first principle chiropractor, the first principle is you have this intelligence within you that heals and repairs constantly, knows exactly what it's doing at every moment. But because there is an interference into the there is an interference to the expression of that intelligence, now things aren't working as well as they can do. My job is to remove that interference. But if people are burning nerves and destroying nerves, then that to me seems to say that there are extra nerves that the body didn't intend to have. And that body has an intelligence that's grown it for the last 350,000 years, developed it over the last 350,000 years. And then a human being operates from conception until death, from two tiny half cells until the body actually dies and the innate intelligence leaves the body. Then that intelligence is huge. So having someone say, well, those nerves are extra, I have a little difficulty with that personally. Obviously that isn't the opinion of chiropractic in general, but that's just where I come from. Right. So anyway, so again, that is not what I do. But what I do is I point out to you things that you should not say to people that have debilitating headaches.
It's just a headache. Were you no off work with us last week? Really? I know somebody whose migraine turned out to be a brain tumour. Are you shitting me?
Yeah, so not something that you should be saying.
You don't look sick. Well, you don't look like an idiot, but here we are.
There we go. So there you go, folks. Now we know at least a dozen things you shouldn't say to someone suffering with a bad migraine. Okay, so we've talked about what a migraine is. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the theories behind what causes a migraine. If you read on the internet, it gives you very little information. It says things like neurological issues. It says things like it may be due to genes. So it doesn't really explain what causes a migraine. Now, I'm in the fortunate position that just using my hands, adjusting people, and an adjustment for those of you that are completely new to chiropractic is just a minimal thrust into primarily the spine, but it can be different areas of the body to affect a correction and remove interference to the body's ability to heal and function. That is what chiropractic was in the first principle, and that's what it is to me. But this I find really interesting, and there are nerve system theories of what is happening. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second, but I want to talk about cerebral spinal fluid. Now, that is the fluid that wraps around the brain, okay, flows around the body. Your tailbone, as it moves, it actually has what's called a sacral pump inside it. So it actually pumps the fluid around the brain. So when you're walking, when you're moving, your tailbone, as it's moving correctly, if the pelvis is in balance, then the tailbone is going to move correctly. And if the tailbone moves correctly, it's going to pump this fluid. And the fluid goes all the way up the spinal cord, around the brain, through things called ventricles. Now, ventricles are reservoirs in the brain, which hold this cerebral spinal fluid. there are 4 different reservoirs throughout the brain, and fluid flows in and out of the reservoirs. And the CSF removes garbage from the nerve system. So in the same way that the blood brings nutrients and removes garbage, CSF brings nutrients and removes garbage from the central nervous system. And the central nervous system is the brain, and then the spinal cord going down into the body. Okay. Now, if you just bear with me a second, I've lost my bones. There it is. I'm going to just enlarge myself a second, folks. Boop. Okay. Now, we saw the diagram. Now, this is the back of the skull. It's something called the occiput. So this is the back of your skull, this bit here. There we go. So that's the back of your skull. Now, inside the occiput is a hole, and that hole goes down into the body. So you can see there, right? Where is it? There we go. You can see right down there. Okay. So the brain sits here in the skull, and then coming down into the body. I don't know if I can show you that clearly. You can see my little pinky there. That's the spinal cord. Okay. This bone just underneath the occiput is a phenomenal bone. It's my favorite bone in the body. It's called C1 or Atlas. Called Atlas because it holds up the weight of the brain, the skull, in the same way that Atlas in Greek mythology held up the world. But it has some special surfaces that allows your head to move backwards and forwards, like, you know, the pirate ship at the fairground. There's no other joint in the spine that does that. It also allows you to get 45 degrees motion. So from here, looking straight ahead, you should be able to turn at least, well, 80 to 90 degrees one way, 80 to 90 degrees the other. And that one bone gives you 45 degrees of motion either side. Hey there, chat. Welcome, welcome. So if you're out in the chat, throw in a few comments. It'd be lovely to hear from you. My name's Dr. Craig. For those of you that didn't catch the beginning of the stream, this is a new show. It's called the Migraine Whisperer. I'll be running every week, Tuesday at 5 p.m. If you have any questions, do put them down in the chat now, or afterwards, even better, if you put them in the comments as well. Then that all helps to pump the algorithm. And what that means is people suffering with migraines get some of these hints and tips. Okay, so back to a bit of anatomy. So this is the skull, the back of the head. This is C1. Now C1 on its own looks like this. So this is the front of it, and it usually sits on a little pivot because the second bone has a little pivot on it. It's a special bone called C2. But the brain is here. If my fist is the brain, then it extends down into the body there. Okay, through the brain. So in other words, every signal going down into the body, and I'll show you this in just a second, has got to go through there. Now, I have a theory, and there is some work on this, but there isn't really a great body of evidence that proves this, although there is a lady that did a study that I read probably 10 years ago now, and she was an upper cervical lady. She did what's called NUCA work. And that's using a little adjusting gun to adjust up here. The same sort of thing that I do. Actually, I can't say I do NUCA. I don't do NUCA, but I do specific upper cervical work. And in the studies, she was using, I believe it was an MRI, to look at those ventricular reservoirs. And the people that she was working with were very, very severely mentally handicapped at the time. They were neurologically handicapped, I should say. So they were in a very bad state. And just by doing very light adjustments at C1 on the MRI, they started to see the ventricles inflate. Now, I'm going to see if I can get hold of a copy, whether that study ever got published. I hope it did. I saw the preliminary work on it, and I was absolutely captivated by it. And the work that I do here, when I adjust people, some people say, oh my God, it feels like someone is flushing my head. I've heard that once in this office, and I've actually seen a video of a top football quarterback who also had the very same experience. I'll have to coordinate that together, perhaps for another show. But anyway, back to here. So if C1 and C2 and the occiput, these three together have a series of muscles that attach to them to allow all this motion. If you've taken a blow, either physically, chemically, or emotionally in the past, this can become encapsulated there and actually ends up putting pressure on I believe on the spinal cord. So neurologically, it's going to start to interfere with signals flowing from the nerve system. But also, I suspect that here is like a log jam. So you've got logs in the way and the river's not flowing as it should do. Now, when you raise the stresses, it's like pumping more water in the river. So usually it's flowing, it's not a problem, but now there's just an overflow, and now the water's going onto the banks, it's going everywhere it shouldn't be. And you imagine if the rest of that river is carrying toxins away and now it's not having the full flow, the toxins are going to build up in that part of the river. So to me, that just kind of is quite a nice analogy to understand what's going on when I'm adjusting people and the migraines are improving or the headaches are improving. And what's actually happening either neurologically with the nerve system or with the CSF system. Okay, so there you go. There's a little potential explanation of what's going on and why these triggers can affect you. Okay, now this is what I do. I mentioned to you before, I don't treat symptoms, but this is what I do. I do remove interference. Okay, so throughout life we have physical interference. So soccer players running into goalposts, or as goalkeepers, banging their heads or whatever, or soccer players running into goalies, falling down the stairs, whiplash in your car, walking into a cupboard. There's so much stuff going on there. Chemicals in the food that we eat. It's smoking, it's in the recreational drugs, but it's also in the non-recreational drugs, in the medical drugs that we take. That's the biggest source of chemical stress. And then emotional is in the, relationships that we have, trouble relationships, trouble with family. And the body adapts to stress, but if the stress is too great, too prolonged, and there is an interference in the body, then this ends up putting pressure on the nerve system, and the function of the nerve system changes. Okay, my job is to adjust the nerve system, to adjust the structure and adjust the muscular system, and that ends up bringing balance back to that person. Okay, and then this is what it looks like. So we've got the stresses at the top there, and then that affects the nerve system, which in turn affects the muscle system. Now it says muscle system. For this diagram, that's correct, but those nerves also go to the organs. Okay, and that the muscle system affects the structural system. Now here's the thing: you can have imbalance on the structure, and you can have imbalance on the structure, and there are no symptoms whatsoever. But you can live like that for years, months, years, weeks, and even tens of years. There's no symptom until finally, bang, symptoms start occurring. Okay, and then the other thing to be aware of is, as I mentioned, those nerves, half of them also go to the organ system. Okay, so if there's imbalance in the lower back, it could conceivably be affecting the colon, how the prostate's functioning, how the muscles in the glutes are functioning, and that in turn is going to affect the legs. It's going to affect the pelvis. If the pelvis is not moving correctly, guess what? Now the sacral pump isn't moving correctly. So you can have a problem in your pelvis. It's affecting the sacral pump. It's affecting the flow of CSF around your brain because of a twist in the pelvis. So that's kind of and that's even before we start talking about neurology, because the nerves do communicate with one another. You lose, for example, you change the pelvic angle and the head comes forward. If you thrust your pelvis forward, I don't know if you guys can see that, probably not. Let's get a little bit of thrusting going on, but keep it family friendly. All right. So we've got the pelvis, we bring that forward, the head comes forward. Okay. So that is called the ocular pelvic reflex. So everything is connected, both nerve system wise, even structurally. Okay. Right now, before I jump in, I told you earlier that I have got a wonderful person who's come to hang out with us. And I would love to introduce you to Mariah. Woo!
Hello.
Big round of applause.
My name is Mariah. I am a varsity soccer player. I am a goalkeeper. So that's why you mentioned goalkeeping a lot earlier. I've been playing since the age of 5. And over the years have definitely had my own concussions. I also experienced a car accident where I developed whiplash. My fair share of sports injuries with my hip surgery, with my ACL surgery, and the accumulation of that over 20 years has resulted in me having headaches almost every day. I'd never been diagnosed with migraines, but considering how recurrent they were, that might have been a diagnosis if I sought other type of medical help. But Dr. Craig is a good friend of mine, and he was willing to help me. So I've had 4 or 5 adjustments.
That's it. You've just been here 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks, and I've already only experienced 1 headache within those 2 weeks, which is, almost 14 headaches less than I normally would have.
How many do you get a week usually?
Normally about 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've experienced 1 within the last 2 weeks. So he's a wizard, or the Migraine Whisperer. As he likes to.
Where it comes from.
Yeah. So if you're experiencing migraines, headaches, this is definitely a very good answer, and I am testament to it.
Right. Now, before you go,
Yes.
Mariah's going to stay with me because we're going to do a little bit of work together. So you can see it's pretty easy. So one of the things that I'm going to show you guys, the 3 things that you can do right now to start to make a difference, okay? Because I'm all about taking action and getting results. In fact, results. That's the only 3 reasons that people come to a chiropractic office. So if you just bear with me, boop. Right. So we're going to do, the first thing is, and I'm going to put a link in the description to a full video on this, and it goes through 2 different things that you can do physically to ease a migraine. So to start with, if you just feel your temples, okay, if you slide down off like your temple, you just feel like it feels like a ridge. Now that is a ridge. It's actually I'm going to grab the skull in a second. It's actually a bony arch. It's called the zygomatic process, okay? And underneath that arch, a big muscle comes down to the top of the jaw, okay? So if you slide above that arch, you feel kind of an area that feels kind of soft and squishy. So that's actually the insertion for one of the big muscles that hold the jaw, that cause the jaw to clench. It's called the masseter muscle. So just very gently, just doing circular motion. So obviously, if we've got an interference in the body there, it's not a vertebral interference that I deal with. But in this case, if the skull is for some reason out of balance, in the skull, even as an adult, you have plates, but they do move very slightly. They can twist. As a small baby, they move quite a lot. So just rubbing there for like 30 seconds, just when you're in the midst of a migraine, could be a help. And also holding pressure there, open the jaw and closing, open that jaw and closing. And then what that is doing, I believe, is taking pressure of the muscles off of that area. It's actually changing the neurology at the jaw, and it's perhaps taking pressure off of some of these sutures. A suture is another word for a joint in the skull bones. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to show you is, for me, is the most exciting thing to show people. So this is why I've got Mariah here. So if you just, there's another excellent reason for having Mariah here, because I want to see if, hold on, not that one. That's okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, there we go. Right. Well, we're going to get there it is there, the big one there. Boop. There we go. Okay. Now this one, remember this bone here sits right underneath the skull. Now, if you have what's an interference in chiropractic, is called a subluxation. So if you have a subluxation to this bone here, then it will feel uncomfortable, like an uncomfortable tickle. In some cases, it might actually have a sharp pain when you press on it. And in other cases, when you press, it can actually set off migraines. Or when you get adjusted, or if you press, you can feel tingling in the arms, okay? Because as I showed you on the diagram earlier, every single signal for life goes down through this bone down into the body. Even the signal growing cells on your big toe has got to go down through this bone. So cool way to find it though, to actually feel your bone. The point is, in your neck, when you press on this side, you're actually pressing on this thing here. So you're pressing there. And if you've got your finger on this side, you can feel it move. And it is pretty freaky when you press on one side and feel your other finger move. Okay, so I'll show you how you find it. So if you just put your hand just behind your ears, if you want to do this with Mariah, and then so you just behind your ears, you can feel a bony, it's like a bony outcrop there. That's called the mastoid processes of the skull. And you slide down off there, and you just come off the back of the skull, and you feel like the meat and the muscles of the neck. Now, if you're running your finger underneath the back of your skull, and as you go over those kind of meaty muscles, you'll feel a little crease between two muscles. And that is actually the point where atlas is. And if you press deep into that crease with one finger, you feel, you just felt it, didn't you?
Yeah.
She just felt it. So I could also see when people do it, because even now it freaks me out. And I'm a chiropractor, but when I do it to myself, it feels a lot different. So that's it. You felt that then?
Oh, yeah.
So what you were doing then, did it cause?
No. It was good.
Okay.
So
Mariah's been under care for a little tiny bit, but sometimes if you're not under care, just be careful with this. It's a good exercise so that you get to know your body. This is what this is to do. This is the second thing, get to know your body. The first was a practical exercise, practical release. This is get to know your body. Now, some autistic children, when that is out there, for example, that to me, the medical term is autism. I don't look at it as autism. A lot of people live on a spectrum. I look at it as a potentially either partially or completely due to an interference in the body. Whether it's what I correct or not is another matter. But if children are really uncomfortable with you touching that area, or even yourself, when you're pressing there, it feels like an uncomfortable tickle, that is a really good indicator that there's a potential interference, a subluxation there. So on the next show, I'm going to show you how to search for an upper cervical chiropractor, someone who works like me, who works specifically with upper cervical work. And I think I did, I'll save that one for next week. I did have it uploaded, but we'll save that one for next week. Okay, now I just want to show you, here's what in the skeletal structure, what the atlas looks like. This is where it is. So there it is. That's what we're talking about, right underneath the skull there. Okay. Right, so we don't see the nerves there, but we do see a nice picture of the structure. Okay, now this is the third thing that you can do. This is a third thing that you can do, which is super, super helpful. And that's to run a journal. Now, what are you looking for? So if you have, obviously, the frequency of migraines, so Mariah's had them for a while. How many years did you have migraines for?
On and off for 8 years.
8
since
years,
I was
wow.
16.
Since you were 16, right? So that's a huge period of time. Did you remember? Oh, no, it doesn't matter.
It was the car accident.
It was a car accident. Right. Yeah. You did mention that. Yeah, great. Okay, so obviously she's been living with them for a while, but however, to still record what triggers them, what sets them off when you have them is really important. One of the first things I ask anyone that comes to my office that has headaches, I ask them how many they get a week and how long do they last. Because someone might be getting 5 headaches a week, and in a month's time they're still having 5 headaches, but it's gone from 5 hours a day to just 20 minutes a day. So that's massive. Their life has changed, even though they're getting the same frequency of headaches. But the reason that you should keep a journal, and this is going to help you change things, is while you're working out how to get someone, like if you choose to go to a chiropractor to get the interference removed, which obviously I recommend. To me, it's a no-brainer because it's one of the least interfering interventions that you can do. But aside from that, if you want to keep a record of things that induce migraines or things that possibly induce them, and then you can do what's called I've forgotten the word, exclusion. Then you can do an exclusion diet or have an exclusion routine. So in other words, if you run every single day, and you get migraines every single day, and then a few days you don't run, and you know you're not getting migraines, then that plays into it. And then if you do something and you can run without getting migraines, you know that that new thing that you've been doing, be it chiropractic care, be it changing your diet, be it, I don't know, a different running exercise routine, then you know that's improving it. So it's a simple thing, but it can help pay huge dividends. Also, there could be 4 or 5 things that are all competing with one another that are causing the migraine. So if you remove 1 or 2 of them and you keep a record of it, then you can try and isolate what's actually causing the main problem. So I'm a big believer in journaling, and journaling anyway is good for mental health. I journal.
So do I.
You do, yeah. Just writing out things that I've been grateful for, things that I want to be grateful for in the future, and and things I want to do the next day. So that keeps them pretty clear in my mind. So right, so we're just going to go on through and let's. There we go. Let's get on the bigger camera. Okay, guys. So this is my exam room. We're going to go on through to the adjusting room. There's the X-ray machine. So it's Sunday today. No, it's not Sunday. It's Monday. It's a bank holiday. We're going to do something a little bit different. All right. We're going to do what's called an occipital lift. So what we're going to do is have you take a seat there in the.
Very cool machine. Gun thing.
Okay. So obviously, after years of identifying my own atlas, I am blessed because I get to work with other people now. Now, did you say you've had no headaches at all, or they're just much more reduced?
I've had 1.
Yeah. Okay.
So significantly reduced.
I checked Mariah on Friday. It was Friday, wasn't it?
Friday.
So that's just 3 days ago. Okay. And when I checked her, I found that there was like a buildup of tension just underneath her ear on the right-hand side. Okay. Now, I wouldn't just do this right from the get-go. So although you've seen me walk in here, there is a lot of context to it. So this is a move that I use not that often. It's an awesome adjustment. I use it basically for people that have got migraines that aren't shifting at all. It seems to be a game changer adjustment. I'll put a couple of links in the description down below. You can see this adjustment in different contexts as well, in different videos. And do go through the videos on the channel. Share them with your friends and family if they're relevant to them. And do the like, do the subscribe. I'm super busy. I try and share information with you, add value as much as I can, but I can't always do it to a schedule. So I've got this one, the Migraine Whisperer show, which is going to be on Tuesdays at 5. Today's Monday, but usually it'll be on Tuesday at 5. It's because it's a stat holiday weekend this week. So I'm closed today, so I need to work extra tomorrow, so I can't do the show. But anyway, I'm going to talk you through what I'm doing. So I'm just checking the upper section of the neck now. And I'm palpating a little bit like I showed you how to do on Atlas, but I'm doing it on all the bones. And in Mariah's case, your neck is moving much better. I feel there, this is what I was talking about. Left is actually soft. I don't know if that's painful, but here, this is where the problem is. You feel
that's
that?
where it's sore.
Yeah.
That's where it's
so I'm at C2, C1. C1 is here. That's where you were pressing earlier. And then this adjustment, I'll tell you what we're going to do.
Okay, let's do it.
She's a good sport. And she likes her adjustments.
I do.
You do. Okay, so just take a contact on the C1.
Holy schooly.
So.
Whoa.
Now that was Mariah's first time she's been adjusted on that adjustment, but you feel the difference there now?
Yeah.
How your palms are sweaty?
Look at them.
So Mariah's palms go sweaty when she gets adjusted. That's what's called a parasympathetic response, which is a rest and digest response. I'm just going to do a little one here, it won't be much.
Freaky. Whoa.
Okay. And that is one of those crack videos.
So
it's not
good.
about the crack, all right? It's about removing interference to the body's beautiful intelligence so it can function better.
Oh my goodness.
But I thought Mariah was going to enjoy that.
That was awesome.
Okay, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed that show. Come back next week, tell your friends and family about it. And if you're watching on the replay, do put some comments down below. That'd be great to hear from you. Yeah, do it.
That was so
all right.
cool.
Okay, and I will see you next week, next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Be there or be square. All right. Dr. Craig, out.